Hello. I think at this moment there's nobody actually watching this, but I'm going to start talking anyway. And those of you who know me know that that's not ever really been a struggle for me. Thank you for all of those of you who did send in questions so far, and I'm hoping that some folks will start logging in to view this live and come up with a few more good questions. Otherwise, I'm going to go back to working on my next blog post. So let's start at the beginning. For those of you who may not know me very well, my name is Rachel, and I am serving in the Diocese of Brasilia, Brazil, as a young adult service corps missionary for the Episcopal Church from the sending diocese of Southwest Florida. I have been here not quite 7 months so far of my year, but it has certainly been interesting. I've had a lot of questions from folks who have followed along on my blog website, which I will put on this video after it is over and goes on YouTube. So look for that down in the information section. But I've also had folks sending questions who very clearly have no idea what I'm doing here. So I'll cover a little bit of all of that. The first question was, how's the weather? Right now we are in late fall, as I am in the southern hemisphere. Although not all of Brazil is, some of it is above the equator, but I happen to be below the equator. It's late fall, but here in central Brazil in the Cerrado region, that means it's usually about mid-70s during the daytime and low 60s, sometimes in the 50s at night, Fahrenheit, obviously. But if it gets that cold, all the locals break out puffy jackets and long pants and big fat fluffy socks, and then look at me in my t-shirt and shorts and go, "Aren't you cold?" No, I've lived in the Midwest for too much of my life to be cold when it's 50 degrees outside. But it's also the dry season, which means that there have been mornings I've woken up and the humidity is about 14%. So for a girl from Florida, where if it dips below 80% humidity, it's a miracle. I feel a little bit like a raisin, but I'm getting used to it. Also important to note, it's very much like Texas weather in a lot of ways, especially southern Texas. The difference is that there isn't central air conditioning and there isn't heating here. So I just open my windows or close them. I do have a one-room air conditioner for my bedroom, which during the more hot and humid part of the year, I would close myself in and and hide from the heat. But in general, it's really just very nice because you can just open the windows and get a cross breeze. And because of the lack of humidity, it may be hot in direct sunshine, but if you're in the shade, it's really quite nice. Sorry, I've just had a message come here. Sorry, somebody asking me how long I'm going to be doing this. So there you have it. So that's a little bit about the weather and the region here where I am. There are 2 other young adult service corps missionaries in Brazil. One of them is in Rio and near south in an area called Santa Maria. She actually has winter and needs to wear coats and boots and jeans. Rio is a bit chillier than here right now. Sorry, same message. Oh, okay. Sorry, that was a question coming in. I'll answer a little bit in a minute. So she's in the cold. Rio's a little bit colder. I am in the central region, and I'll show you guys that on a map here in a minute. But because it's a plateau region and it's basically desert, in a lot of respects, it's very dry. So the weather here is much hotter on average year-round than it is for the other 2 here. So the other question I've gotten a lot from folks is how big is Brazil, or how far are other people? There are a number of other missionaries that were in Latin America this year, but except for those of us in Brazil, the rest of them are all in Central America. So the nearest one outside of Brazil is in Panama City, which is, I think, like a 5.5-hour plane flight from here. So it's not close. The nearest missionary to me is Brian, who's in Rio, and that's still about a 2-hour plane flight to get there. And it's something crazy by bus. So here's a quick, where did it go? I've lost the thing I wanted to show you. So I will try and get that back in a moment, but why is it not letting me do this? Sorry, technical problems plague even me. Aha, here it is. So this is a really cool sort of map, and it's you can go to truesizeof.com or something like that. And so it allows you to select a place. So there's Brazil. And then you can drag it and kind of see, because a lot of maps, when Latin are distorted, and especially in the Northern Hemisphere, the distortion enlarges things like Canada, the United Kingdom, and especially Greenland, but it also enlarges the US. So if you put the tip of Florida on the tip of Brazil, you'll see that Brazil actually goes way the heck up in Canada. Brazil is, in total size, bigger than the continental US. The only reason the US is bigger is because they have Alaska. But you'll see that with the relative points, there are some parts of Brazil that are as far away from the tip of Florida as Alaska is on this map. So it's really quite a huge place. And you can see there that it is not tiny by any means. It is a long way to go. The state that I live in, YASC, is actually the same size as the entire country of Finland. So it's a big place. I did have someone who asked me where I've been. I've been is very short, partly due to personal illness and partly there's my phone. I don't actually know what number that phone is. It came with the house. So pretty much guarantees that's a telemarketer. So I just ignore it. Sorry, you're gonna have to listen to it from here. Yeah, between having recently in college. So that just dropped the whole video. So hopefully, I don't know what you saw in that point, but I'm back now. Part of it is because the internet is tied in with the phone line. I have DSL. So the phone call thing kind of jams stuff up. So as I was saying, I did get to go to Rio and visit Brian for Carnival. And I did a blog post about that. So if you want to see all those pictures and the stories and me trying to kill myself by climbing to the top of the tallest mountain in Rio de Janeiro, that's all already online on the blog post. And obviously I lived. But there's a huge list of places I want to see. Like I said, Brazil is bigger than the continental US. So if you can imagine, for those of you who've lived in the US all your life, if you still have places of note you want to see in the US, Brazil has just as many places, if not more, because it's bigger, and it is the most biodiverse country in the world. So there's also a lot more differences in terms of stuff to see, because you've got everything from deserts to rainforest, the Amazon rainforest, and all sorts of stuff. Thank you, James. I just saw your message. But it's not telling me the video is bad other than when the phone rings. So hopefully people stop calling me. I don't like to use real phones anyways. I'm a millennial like that. Yeah, so there's a lot of places on my want to see list, and I'm hopefully going to get to go to more of them. Right now, the only place I have booked a ticket to is back to Rio in August to go to see the Olympics. I did have somebody ask me, with all the news coverage in the States being about the water pollution and Zika and the things that aren't done yet due to political issues, whether or not I think the Olympics will actually happen, and if so, what my thoughts on that were. There's still a lot that is going to happen politically before the Olympics that will affect a lot of that stuff. I can say personally, I do not know anyone who has gotten Zika, and I also don't know anyone who knows anyone that has gotten Zika. It started on the East Coast over in Recife, and it's not as, I know a couple people who've gotten dengue or chikungunya, but so far Zika is not yet where I am. However, it tends to thrive in more rural areas. The other thing is this being a Cerrado region and so dry, and the dry season especially now, when it's dry, it's a lot easier to not have mosquitoes. So all of those things were a lot worse during the rainy season when I first got here. And now that it is so dry and there's not a lot of standing water, that reduces the mosquito issues as well. So as far as the other stuff, as far as infrastructure and building, I know that a lot of that has been stalled because of horrendous financial management by the politicians here. You can't throw a stone and hit a non-corrupt politician at this point. That was a joke I heard from somebody else, not my personal commentary. Oh, goodness. Oh, thanks, James. He says, I could point out that the person I know that did get Zika is in El Salvador, not in Brazil. But he's better now, I promise. I saw him recently. He's alive. He's happy. I hope, still. So yeah, Zika is not as huge of an issue in my neck of the woods or in Rio. But with a lot of incoming tourists, that could definitely be a concern. That was how it got here in the first place, was tourism for the World Cup a couple years ago. So I don't think they'll cancel it for Zika. I don't at this point think they'll cancel it for infrastructure. The largest portion of everything is at least usable. It's not great. A lot of the things they have cut were projects that tied in with the Olympics for city improvement, but the main reason for those would be to relieve traffic congestion and pedestrian access. And so the event could technically go on without those, which is sad, because those were the things that would make the biggest difference to Cariocas, which are people from Rio after the Olympics. You know, better highways, more subways, subway lines, and better bridges and stuff like that, as well as the running trails and things of that nature. So those are the things they have pushed off, and those are the things, while they're useful for the Olympics, were actually more beneficial to the locals in the long run. So that's sort of unfortunate and not surprising. Let's see, was that all about the Olympics question? I think so. Yeah, the political situation, I can't even tell you all of it because I don't understand all of it. It's about 30 years of backstory, and it is complicated, and is all like a giant ball of crazy, and I don't even understand. I've tried to post stuff that seems to be fairly well balanced as far as English versions of the articles go, but that's really hard to find, things in English. But there are so many, it's just a flood of political news in Portuguese that no one has time to read all of that. So the fact that I am about 40 kilometers from the capital, but have so little idea of what's actually happening anymore. And it seems that that's fairly common here. This is one of the poorest areas outside the city, and by most standards would be called a favela, but the people here, they got bigger issues to worry about than a trial. And so when there have been protests in the city, even the massive ones that took over the entire National Mall, out here it was really pretty quiet, because these people aren't politically outspoken in the traditional sense. So luckily for me, that means that there's not as many security risks in terms of political and federal police activity, but that means that I don't always know a lot about what's going on if I choose not to go search out that information. I'll see stuff on Facebook sometimes, but I currently don't have a local TV setup. I'm working on it. I have to buy a little box thing, but I don't know where or how to do that, so someone's supposed to help me with that. Yes, I am seeing the questions now. Sorry, I forgot to reopen that. As far as sports that I want to see for the Olympics, I have to talk to my friend Brian about that, because obviously since he's already in Rio, we'll be going together. A lot of the sports are still available, and part of that is because of the political climate, that local Brazilians have not put the money out for the tickets that they reserved for Brazilians. Each country has a different portion of tickets allotted to it, and so purchasing as a US citizen actually is a much more limited option pool than purchasing as a Brazilian. So that's kind of nice that I can borrow somebody's number, the equivalent of a security number, and watch and use that to see the events I want to see, especially because some of the preliminary rounds go for $10 to $15 US for a ticket. So I can spend $100 and see 6 different things, and most of them are multiple matches. So we've still got a long list of options. If I decide to really throw money into it, I still have the option to see the gold medal round of the men's 10-meter platform diving, synchronized diving, which is kind of cool. I was like, I could see Tom Daley. That would be pretty awesome. But those are a lot more, those are about $200 US. So not sure I'm gonna go for that, but I am looking at their soccer matches. There is field hockey and kayaking and men's water polo and rugby and a whole bunch of other stuff. I did not look at ping pong or judo because I don't know enough about those. Well, I know enough about ping pong, but I don't want to watch it. I don't know enough about a lot of the martial arts to understand what I'm watching. So I'm sort of focused on the sports that I already know the rules and regulations and strategies of. And also just getting to see a soccer match at the Olympics in Brazil would be a huge deal. That's a big sort of thing, even though they don't tell you who's playing in it when you buy the tickets. So that was, oh, okay, that's how that question thing works. I've never used this before, sorry guys. So that's the answer to Katie's question. And hi, Katie, if you're watching, I'm so glad that you're out there. And I want to thank you for having prayed for me since before I left as a missionary. And I want you to know that I'm praying for you right back as you keep going through all your doctor visits. And, you know, I've donated my hair a lot too. It's really good. Short hair is a lot easier. Katie also wants to know what I do for work. So what I am trying to do, I'm sort of iffy about how I'm doing this. I'm not sure I'm gonna be as successful as I wish I could be, is I am starting and designing from nothing a scratch for a computer information technology class for kids aged 4 to 13 years old. The majority of my students do not have a computer at home. Of those who do, about half of the ones that do aren't allowed to use it at all. It's a computer that belongs to grandpa, dad, mom, big brother, whomever, and they're not allowed to touch it. So I've only got about 25% of my kids that have access to a computer at home, but then only about half of my kids in total, actually about a third, can read and write on their own. So that has been a really big challenge, in addition to creating a course for computer education and putting it all in Portuguese, and then making sure that all the activities have options for non-readers, and that I'm not relying on any time outside class to practice or use computers. So in a lot of ways, it's not going how I wish it would, but it's also going. So that's good news. I am back at work, and I'm going to continue to be trying to be there all the time, and get these kids as much time on the computers as they can while I'm still here. So that's what I do for work. But the job of being a missionary is about a lot more than just that. Because technically, as a missionary, my job is also to hang out with my friends here and go to church and learn new songs in Portuguese, and read my new Portuguese Book of Common Prayer, which I'll bring home and show folks because it's really pretty. And it's very, very new. It's about a year old now. So my job is not just teaching computers, technically. That's the job I do while I'm here. But a missionary's job is really to be a part of the community and get to know them and get to see what God's doing here in my work. So it's a lot like what I did back home, is, you know, being with my church family and learning about God with them. So I think that's the main part of what the answer is for you, Katie. And Katie's last question, am I having a good time? And I love you. I love you too, Katie. I'm so glad you got to ask stuff. I am having a good time. I've made some really cool friends here and have learned a whole lot, including another language, but a lot about myself and a lot about my relationships and a lot about my faith. So I'll be putting some of that in some upcoming blog posts here. Just before this started, I was working on one about what happened when I went to Puerto Rico, and all the pictures that I have since Easter until now, which includes all the time that I was sick, and information about all my doctor's visits and all the stuff that I went through for that. Because I know a lot of people back up, my poor mother, have all those questions from folks back at Holy Innocents, wondering if I was okay and how it was going and whether anything has happened or anything has been figured out. So yes, some stuff has happened, and yes, some stuff has been figured out. And so I'll put that all there so that folks who are here can see those pictures and enjoy some of the experiences vicariously that I got to have, like meeting Bishop Curry and watching him get to learn how to salsa. So props to Ellie on that one, my friend who's a missionary in Panama. So I am having a good time, and I expect to continue to have a good time and make even greater friendships. So thank you so much, Katie, for all your questions. I'm glad to hear from you. Let's see, what were the other questions I got earlier? Are there any major differences between folks back home and the people here? Portuguese versus English, but other than that, really no. Especially for folks at church. The church community has been absolutely amazing in their support and care for me, even though I have been unable to do a lot of the things I thought I was going to do because of being sick. And I know it's the same care that I've received from church families, both in Florida and church families that we've had before we moved to Florida. So in that respect, really no. In general, maybe as in more cultural terms. Well, it's not really cultural, but my little neck of the woods is very loud for me. And part of that is sensory issues on a personal level. But some of that is just that it's loud. Like, there's fireworks right now because the city anniversary was yesterday. So there were more fireworks yesterday, but there are fireworks now. And it is not uncommon for me to be woken up at 9:15 on a Saturday by fireworks. And I don't know why. I would think that during the daytime, fireworks are less fun because you can't really see them. But what do I know about fireworks? So there's also a rooster that lives behind my house. I call him Nugget. That's not his name. I call him Nugget because I wish he was one, because he's very annoying. He usually starts about 4 a.m. And he takes a break at about 7 when I have to get up to go to school, and then starts again at about 9. So right when I absolutely have to be up is when he finally stops. Likewise, there's a lot of feral dogs in this area of Brazil. And so you'll hear them fighting, or if they find a cat that gets in the way, you'll hear that as well. And then a lot of folks like to really amp up the bass and all the music in their cars and park them outside a house and just listen to music that way. So it's just very loud sometimes. It is not uncommon on a Friday or Saturday night to have music blaring to the point where I can hear it with the whole house closed up until 3 or 4 in the morning. And it's sort of it's a personal issue, but I have earplugs. Once I am asleep is not a problem, but sometimes getting to sleep, especially when they're Saturday night partiers that don't have to go to church in the morning, and then I'm here as a missionary who really does have to go to church in the morning. Not fair. I had someone ask me what it is I miss the most about home and what will I miss the most when I go back home about here. The answer to both of those is exactly the same as the people. Especially this week, I miss my camp family back home as they're starting their day spring summer camp. And I certainly miss my family who we talk every day and video chat when they can and all of that sort of stuff. But it's not the same. And I miss just the people, not necessarily the place. And I know when I go back home, I will miss the people here who have been so wonderful to me and who I have gotten to know. Other than that, what do I miss the most about home in a spoiled brat kind of sense is probably having my car. The town I live in does not have really great public transportation locally. They have buses that go to the city, and that's about all. So it's a lot of walking for groceries and work and anything else I ever want. So I miss having my car and kind of having the freedom to come and go, especially with doctor's appointments. All my doctors are in the city. So having that ability to kind of make my own schedule and not have to call 5 people to make sure I can get to the doctor on a certain day and then stay an extra night because no one's coming back. I miss my car. But that's more just me being a little bit spoiled than it is really a need or anything like that. So it is what it is. If I were in the city, their public transportation in town is a lot better. And when I was there, staying there for Portuguese lessons, I could come and go as I please. The buses were really reliable and affordable. So it's not an all Brazil problem. It is my neighborhood sort of problem. Another question. Oh, on to Ashley's questions. I asked Ashley to send me questions because she has always wanted to know a lot and is a very inquisitive sort of person. So I was like, I need more than 2 questions, which is what I had earlier. I said, think of some questions, and she sent me like 12. So here we go. She asked, how did I know I was called to be a missionary? Okay, just right off the top there. I can't remember if I have put this story on my blog or not. But I know I've told it to a bunch of people because this is obviously a really common question that people want to know, because being an Episcopal missionary is not a very common thing. And so basically, I did not know about the program that I'm currently in until, well, basically the night I applied, well, started my application. So they had done a mailing campaign back in 2014. And so I got a letter at my work at church as a youth leader that said, hey, we didn't know if you knew about this program. Here's what it is a little bit. And since you are a youth leader, if you know anyone who would be a good fit for this program, encourage them to learn more and apply. And I went, okay. And the letter did not have anything about age in it. So I assumed that that meant anybody out of high school, because most youth leaders, at least the ones I know of, tend to work with middle school and high school. And so that night during youth group, knowing that I had, I think, 12 graduating seniors that year, I made an announcement at youth group and said, hey, I got this letter. If any of you guys aren't dead set on your college plans yet, or you're still taking in options for next school year in 2015, here's a program of the Episcopal Church to be a missionary. Sounds pretty cool. So if you're not sure where you're going to school yet, here's the info. And one of my youth members, Emily, raised her hand and asked for the information, and then very politely asked for permission to use her cell phone in youth group, which I do not allow. And so she actually then later raised her hand and said, and I said, oh, did you find something out? And she said, yeah, it sounds like a really awesome program, but the only person in the room eligible is you. And I went, oh, okay. And I just kind of put it aside for a while and said, okay, if I have time, I'll look into whatever this is later. But right now, obviously, I have to conduct youth group. And then it was in November where it was getting late, and that's a message from my sister. It was getting late in the evening and I wasn't able to sleep. And so it was a Saturday night, my parents went to sleep because I don't know why it was probably at their house because it was a Saturday night and I would go into church with them in the morning. Because I wasn't living with them. I don't know why I was there, but I couldn't sleep and I didn't want to have the TV on because the TV is on the same wall as their bedroom. So it's really easy for them to hear and it would keep them up. So I was thinking about what to do until I could fall asleep. And I remembered that letter and went to the website. And basically I spent the entire night. I read every blog that they had for the year, that year of YASCers. And some of them, like every post of every blog. There weren't many that were very verbose in that year. So I read pretty much every post of every blog except for Nina's. Nina was the YASCer in Brazil at the time and who had been in Brazil for a little while. But her first blog post had to do with ministering to kids in the drug gang in Rio, I believe, and talking about how she had lost some of the kids she knew to gang violence. And I went, I can't do that. I don't want to go there. I don't want to do that. I don't want to know anymore. So I skipped hers, which is kind of ironic now that I'm in Brazil. But I read all the other ones and actually messaged 3 different YASCers at about 2 in the morning Eastern time on a Saturday. So the good news was they got back to me by 5 a.m. because it was after church Sunday morning for them. So they were in their free time. So I heard back from one of the girls who was in Burundi in Africa. And I heard back from a guy who was doing his second year in Rome after a first year in Hong Kong. And so they both had really interesting answers to my questions and were extremely helpful. I got to continue to communicate with both of them for quite a while, including by video chat. But basically, I couldn't sleep and I couldn't sleep, and I kept doing all of this. And it wasn't like I knew I needed to be a missionary. It was just like, okay, clearly this is what's next. And so the next morning, actually about half an hour after I finished doing all of this, my parents woke up to get ready for church. And so I said, hey, I need to talk to you guys really quick, and sat them down and said, this is what I want. This is the program and this is what I want to do. And my mom looked at me in her bathroom and goes, duh, I need coffee now, and went to go get coffee. And my dad just looked at me and said, yeah, that $10,000, we're not paying that. But have fun. If God wants you to do this, that money will show up from someone else. And then they both went and got ready for church, which is pretty typical of them. Like, they weren't surprised by this at all. As my mom eloquently stated, they had sort of been expecting something of this nature, or seminary, for quite a while. And so then that morning, I texted my priests, both of them, and said, I need to talk to you when you have a minute between services. And so in between the services, we went back to the office, and I said, this is what I'm supposed to do next. And they had some advice and some questions, but then we went forward from there. And so I did a full discernment committee process, the same way you would for seminary, at the recommendation of my priests, before I went to discernment weekend for YASC, which they do in February, for incoming year, to kind of make sure, get to know us and make sure we're right for the program, as well as us making sure the program is right for us. So I did a lot of discernment in a really short amount of time. But obviously it's worked out. I'm in Brazil. So it's a weird, yeah, there's no like, how do you know you're supposed to be a missionary? Like, I didn't want to be a missionary, but I had to be a missionary. So I am. So that was that question. Is it what I expected? I don't know. I don't really have a lot of expectations. I have done 10 short-term mission trips. Some of them I've gone on, and some of them I have planned and directed within the United States and other areas in North America. So I had 10 of those before I did this. So I wasn't clueless about mission work, but long-term mission is a very, very different thing than short-term mission. And definitely has a lot of strengths that you don't get with short-term mission. So I wasn't necessarily ignorant about what mission meant to me, but I also knew that this wouldn't be anything like what I knew as mission because of the nature of it. I learned a little bit more when we went to discernment and when we were at orientation, but the real truth is they have never had a placement in this area before. They've barely had a lot of, they've had 3 people who have come to Brazil before me, and none of them were anywhere near here. And so, you know, it'd be like if you send someone to Texas versus DC versus Florida, those people are not going to have the same experience because they're so far apart, and the local culture is very, very different in all of those areas. So I learned a little bit about what it was like here, but very, very general sense, and some of that has been dead on true, and some of that has not held for this particular area. So I didn't have a big expectation, so it didn't not fit my expectations, I guess, is the answer. But a big thank you to Reverend Patricia Powers, who was a missionary in Brazil for like 30 years, and especially in the Diocese of Brasilia, and was the Dean of the Cathedral and ordained here, and knew all the dirt on the bishop and every other priest in the diocese, and lives in the Diocese of Southwest Florida now, where she has retired. So she was a huge, huge help in terms of specifics about this place, because the other YASCers really couldn't tell me a lot about this place with these people because they've never been here or never met them or never spent a lot of time here. I think Nina did come here at least once or twice, and Rachel had been here. Well, she was here after we started speaking, but before I got here, while I was waiting on my visa. So Reverend Patricia was a huge help for that, and giving me a lot of insight into the development over time of this area. The next question is about violence in Brazil, and in my area specifically. Have I felt uncomfortable, and am I safe? So I posted in my last blog post that Brazil does have the highest death count by firearms in the world. However, I also said in that a large, like the major chunk of that is gang-related activity. So one, don't join a gang, check. And two, I asked the priest about this, and his response here is that a lot of my students are in families of gang members and are very used to gang activity. There is gang activity here in my little neighborhood. We all know this. But I asked him, I said, well, am I safe? And he said, first of all, you don't look like anybody from here, so they're gonna know who you are. And second of all, they know what you're doing here. It's very small, like everybody's related. In fact, my neighbors are all the bishop's in-laws, and a lot of them are also members of the church. So like the whole street knew who I was before I ever actually moved here. And that's kind of typical of this area. So what he said was, because the kids know who you are and what you're teaching, that you're teaching computer skills, and their parents will know that, and their family members that are involved in gang activity will know that. So you're pretty much safe, because they want you here to give their kids a better life. I don't know if that's exactly what I'm doing. I hope that's what it turns out to be. But the bottom line is, because I'm doing something they want me to do, which is teaching their kids for free, I am pretty well protected by that sort of umbrella of the social center. So I feel safe. I'm not supposed to go out at night by myself. In fact, I'm not even supposed to go out with one other female. You have to have a male in your group, apparently, even though technically they're smaller than me most of the time. I don't know, but I do what I'm told. I've got a steel garage door with double deadbolts on the front, and the back has a padlocked fence, and then a steel bar fence on the patio with double deadbolts, and then the door closes and has a lock. So, and apparently I think the fence is topped with electric fence, so it's like super, super tall. I'm pretty much set. Does not stop the bugs from getting in, but nobody else is getting in unless I let them. So yes, I feel safe. Is it a safe place? Nah, not really, but I am safe, and the community here makes very, very sure that I am safe. Especially if we're at church when it gets dark. I never walk home, somebody drives. And they do that for everybody in the church. It's not like they're just taking care of me because I'm the white girl. They are very protective of their community in general. So, most valuable or impactful lesson? Probably when I got sick. I was sick for close to 2 months straight. Like I did not go to work at all. And in the US, you wouldn't have a job to go back to at that point, even if you were like really, really sick. They don't care. And here, not only were they very accepting of that, they're very supportive of me. I had a lot of folks that checked in on me regularly because I wasn't going to church and I wasn't going to work and I wasn't leaving the house. And so they would come by, and even if I couldn't have company, they would come by at least to the door and check in with me, and see if there was anything I needed, see if I needed a ride to get medicine or food or anything like that. So I think the biggest lesson was just that the culture here is very, very different in terms of priorities. Your health is very much number one, and your family is a very close second. When I was this sick, where I wasn't working and I was miserable and I didn't know what was wrong, and neither did the doctors, my family supported me in whatever I chose. But I had a lot of folks from YASC, other missionaries, who asked me, why aren't you going home? Like, after 2 weeks, I would have been on a plane out of there if I felt like that. Because I couldn't walk and I couldn't take care of myself. I wasn't able to bathe or cook or clean the house at all. I couldn't go anywhere. I couldn't walk far enough to leave. And so some of them were like, why are you not going home? And really, some of the folks here who are a little more mixed cultural, one of the wonderful ladies from the cathedral, Elizabeth, is Brazilian, but has dual citizenship because her parents were both missionaries. Her father was an Episcopal missionary to Brazil, and her grandfather was an Episcopal presiding bishop. So she kind of has both cultures in there, and she even asked me, why are you still here? Like, this seems like you're miserable. Why aren't you home? And like, the only answer I really had was that it just doesn't feel like it. I'm not done. Like, I don't feel like this is over. There's something left here that God wants me to do or get or receive or something. Like, it's not time yet, and my family is okay with that. And so that was the U.S. cultural perspective, was like, if you're not happy, why don't you go home? But the Brazilian perspective, the questions I got from the locals here that were more of a cultural thing, was, if you are unwell and not able to take care of yourself, your family must be worried. So why are you not going home to let your family take care of you and be less worried? So they asked more questions about why I was making my mom worry than why I was unhappy or unable to do things. So that was really interesting. Like, that is a very clear sign of cultural priorities. Like, health comes first, and you do what you need to take care of your health, even if that means putting off work stuff. And that has not just been me. I've seen that in other folks as well. So it wasn't just a courtesy they gave me, but that is a cultural difference. And then the second one is, family takes care of you and you take care of family. And so you would owe it to your family to be where they can help you when you're sick. So that was the part they didn't understand. And they really did not understand my embarrassment asking for help because I was sick. That actually, I tried to explain it with words, and even when I explained it correctly in Portuguese, they looked at me like I was insane, because I was for here. It was this, I understand I can't take care of myself, but I'm too embarrassed to let you help me. And they all went, you're stupid, let us help. And so they did help me eventually, but I had to get over my own personal cultural viewpoint in terms of being ashamed to ask for help because of my own shortcomings. So that would probably be the giantest lesson I have learned here. I don't think that's not something most people ever get to learn outside or within the US, I think. And you definitely have to get a different cultural perspective to learn that one. She asked what I would say the most valuable attributes are for potential missionaries. Sorry, that's the car horn, AKA the Brazilian doorbell. Anyways, so this was actually something I've heard said by a lot of folks that run short-term mission projects for young adults and youth. Is the key to being a good missionary, especially if you're doing it by yourself or leading a group, is to be what they call FAT. F standing for flexible, A standing for adaptable, and T standing for, oh crap, what was T? Teachable, I think. But I would add on a P there for patient. So you want to be flexible, adaptable, teachable, and patient, especially if you're trying to get a visa from Brazil, just saying. I think that goes for short-term mission as well as, but especially for long-term mission. I think if you're a missionary and you walk into a situation anywhere where you are convinced that you know what they don't and you have the answers, that's not mission work, that's pity. And I personally don't want pity, so I can't think that anybody else would either. It's not a great position to be in on the receiving end of that. So, you know, being flexible, obviously things did not go to my plans, but, you know, that's probably better that my plans were not the plans that happened. Being adaptable, being able to change and not necessarily give up, but shift focus to what is truly going to make a bigger difference, and being willing to be teachable, understanding and going with the heart of a learner instead of the heart of a teacher, is a bigger help to anyone trying to do mission work than it is to go in and dictate or authoritatively give your almighty wisdom to those in need, because they probably know more than you do about where they are. So you're wrong. So I guess those are the most valuable assets for missionaries, I think. She asked about whether a lot of folks here consider themselves Episcopalian or Anglican. Within the church community, the church title here is the Igreja Episcopal Anglicana do Brasil, which is the church, well, if you put it in the English order, it is the Episcopal Anglican Church of Brazil. They fully do consider themselves to be Episcopal Anglicans. However, as far as the country goes, Episcopalians have like this teeniest, weeniest slice of gigantic pie. The general understanding is that very, very few things, there's like almost nothing outside of Christianity here, especially in this area. If you find someone who is 100% not Christian, they will have, some of them have ties to indigenous faiths. Some of them will have ties to Shinto, I believe. Brazil has the largest number of ethnically Japanese people outside of Japan due to migration after the Second World War. They're not in my area per se, but we do have good sushi because of that, which is very interesting because I know some of my friends who are vastly closer to Asia have no sushi. So I find that really interesting. If you get Asian food, it's all pretty much Japanese. There's no Chinese, there's no Korean, it's all Japanese. But and so some of that religion comes with them, and there's some connections to Caribbean and African religions as well because of the slave trade that was here. But the by and large, like overwhelming majority of the country is Christian. The majority of that claims Catholicism, Roman Catholicism, and there are folks beyond that. Okay, James, I'm gonna get there, sorry. But the interesting thing is that even though a lot of the country claims Roman Catholicism, the ones that are practicing Roman Catholics tend to be the upper echelon, the very rich. And those in my neck of the woods tend to be very, very evangelical, including the Episcopal Church here in my town is very evangelical. The cathedral in the city is much more Anglican, but the congregation I am a part of is extremely evangelical in a lot of rites. And I think I've only seen one Catholic church here. It's a big church, but there's like 1,000 little tiny evangelical churches that are Bible churches or Church of Jesus Christ or trying to remember what the translations are for the other ones. Disciples of Christ, Pentecostals. So a lot of the poor are a lot more evangelical. And I'm not entirely sure what the root cause of that is. I just know that the joke here is if you're rich, you're Roman Catholic, and if you're not, you're evangelical. So there's really not a lot of people that consider themselves Anglican at all in terms of the overall population of Brazil. She asked about meeting Michael Curry, and is awesome, but I'm going to not give more than an answer for that because it is the next blog post that will come out this weekend. So my favorite food, my favorite Brazilian food, it's all really pretty good. I have a very big sweet tooth, and brigadeiro, which is a chocolate and sweetened condensed milk fudge then rolled in sprinkles, and is very, very common at like every event. It's yummy, and I will be making it a lot when I get home because those are all really easy things to find at home too. James wanted to know, have I had any food poisoning? Yes and no, like not legit food poisoning. I have had an upset stomach because even before I came to Brazil, I did not eat a lot of red meat. It just personally wasn't a thing. Being in Florida, I would eat chicken sometimes, but I also ate a lot of seafood, a lot of fish and shrimp. And so the food poisoning I got was basically, if I would stay with folks, Brazilians have red meat at like every meal, including breakfast. And so when I was living with different hosts here and eating what they served, at the outset I got really sick to my stomach because my body was just not up for handling that level of red meat. Now that I live on my own, I get teased because I don't eat red meat very often, but my tummy is happier, so I'm gonna stick with it. And there's really, really, really great produce in Brazil. So there's a lot of good things to eat that aren't red meat, but the Brazilians don't seem to agree with me on that one. Any dietary changes? Like I just said, moving here, I have cut down on fish a lot because there just isn't a lot of good fish when you're living in a desert. But if I am in the city, I will splurge because they do fly it into the city, not out here at all. Or out here is lake fish, which I've never really cared for. So I had salmon for lunch today because I bought it when I was in the city last week. Well, this week, whenever that was. When I was last in the city, I got salmon. And so I space it out, make it last as long as I can. But a lot of the time I eat totally vegetarian. There is a lot of cheese. So I appreciate that because I know my friends over in Asia really don't get any cheese, or it's very, very, very expensive. Here I can get a big old block of mozzarella, which is about 12 reais, so somewhere around $4 for a pound of cheese. They don't do anything. Sometimes they'll do it sliced, but I can easily slice or shred cheese, so it's a good deal for cheese. Just not a lot of variety out here. It's mozzarella or queijo fresco, which is a local thing, but it's made with very little fat, and it squeaks like cheese curds, but it tastes like nothing. And so I don't eat it. They will eat it with dulce de leite or dulce de coco, which is sweetened condensed milk or sweetened condensed milk with coconut. They'll do it as a dessert cheese kind of thing, but I can't get over the textural issues to eat it. I've tried it, it's not my thing. Even if you're connected online with people, do you feel lonely or alone? If so, what are ways to cope with that? So I will tell you one of the things that was said at the missionary conference in Puerto Rico. It was not just long-term missionaries, it was folks from all over the Episcopal Church who have interest in mission work. And so a lot of them have never done long-term mission work. And so one of the questions that was raised in the session was, that being a long-term missionary can be very, very lonely. And there was a man in the back of the room that stood up and said, well, if they basically, I'm paraphrasing here, this is not his exact words, but basically what he said was, if they do a better job of reaching out to their communities back home, we'd be able to support them and encourage them. I would like to say, I feel like I do a really pretty good job of that. I post blogs pretty often. I Snapchat with my youth kids. and with diocesan friends and other churches and other priests. I stay in really pretty good contact, especially in comparison to some of the other long-term missionaries, especially the ones over 50. I stay in pretty good contact with folks. I often communicate with my parents and my sister and my grandparents and my cousins and at least 7 or 8 kids from my youth group and church and all sorts of folks online and through Facebook and through private messaging as well. And I can still tell you that there are plenty of nights that I've cried myself to sleep. And that's part of the experience, but that's also part of where you find growth. So yes, there are some times when it is lonely, but it's good, I guess. Like, it's not good in the moment, duh. But it's not a bad thing to feel alone because you're wrong. You know, it's one of those, I guess that's something I left out on my things it takes to be a missionary, because I definitely would add that if you need to be a person that when faced with a challenge or a struggle, your immediate response is to turn to your faith and not to other folks or, and I'm not perfect at this. Clearly, the people that I've bothered in the middle of the night can tell you that I'm not perfect at this. Luckily for some of them, my middle of the night is their middle of the morning, so it's not been such an issue. But if you're not a person that regularly and successfully knows how to rely on their faith, you shouldn't be a missionary until you got that in place. Because I think without that, you're going to crash and burn really easily. It's not going to be a healthy or safe place for you, emotionally, spiritually, mentally, regardless of whether it's physically safe or not. So ways to cope with being alone. I know for me with mental health concerns, I promised that if I were really struggling, that I promised to reach out before it got dark, in an emotional sense, because that has been, I'm too far away from a hospital for that to be, that's a safety concern. And so I already had that deal in place with a couple of people before I came here, who I knew would answer anytime, any reason to make sure that I was safe. But other ways to cope with, especially consistent loneliness, because just having a crisis moment is very different from being consistently lonely. And so consistent loneliness is a personal shortcoming, I feel like. If I was feeling consistently lonely, it was my job to take care of myself by reaching out to others. And that's not fun and it's not easy, especially when I was feeling more introverted. But coming at it with that perspective of, you know, I'm here and I'm by myself and I have to do selfishly whatever it takes for me to keep me healthy, because nobody else will. I feel like that's actually true no matter where you are, but it's especially evidently true when you are a missionary on your own. And so that was sort of the approach I've started taking to it, and that goes for my dietary and physical health and my mental and spiritual and emotional health as well, is that, you know what, like, God gave me these things for me to take care of, and nobody else can take care of me better than I could if I didn't. So so that would be probably the best coping tool I've had, because then that's sort of a blanket statement wherein that applies to absolutely everyone. Like, no one on earth can do better for you than you can if you step up. And so I started learning that before I ever applied to be a missionary, when I started my weight loss and health journey, learning to value myself and take care of myself. And that really did help once I was here, as well as learning other tools on how to care for myself in all those situations, whether it was being brave and picking up a phone and texting someone and saying, hey, I need to hang out. I need to, like, you can just be having dinner or I can cook for you, like, but I need to be around a person. Even if I can't talk to them because I have no Portuguese. But other times it was, you know, learning to journal with a purpose, or taking on a project that had tangible results so that I could feel like I had accomplished something. And some of the times it has been me saying, you know what, I'm not going to do dishes today. I can't stand up long enough to do dishes and to take a shower. And what I need right now is to take a shower and screw the dishes. So it has been a learning experience in that regard, and that is far beyond what it means to be a missionary. I think that's a responsibility of being an adult, and well, at least a healthy adult, and it is not easy to learn. So do I plan on continuing my missionary ministry? If so, how, and if not, why? I do. There's a lot of stuff up in the air right now about my future and my time, even my time here. There's still quite a bit of it left, especially in comparison to some of the other folks who are done with their years already because they started so much sooner than I did, because of the visa process. And also, sorry that this has gone on way longer than the hour and a half it was supposed to. Wait, no, it hasn't yet. Time difference. Cha-ching. So I still have half an hour. Ha ha ha. Anyways, I do plan to continue missionary work. I learned through some of my own personal reflections and through some of the discussions we had at the conference a little bit more about how I concretely define being a missionary, because it is not restricted to work like this. And so I'm still sorting a lot of that out, and a lot of that depends on other people, but I do have plans and I do have goals, but because they depend on decisions of other people, I don't really want to say that that's something I'm going to do. It says so in my journal, but I don't want to put something out there and saying, I'm going to do this, and then have something go wrong on somebody else's part and then have people blame them, because that's not right. But yes, I have concrete goals, and they are written down in my journal as I am going to do this. This will happen. I will be this, and a lot of journaling into reality what it is that I want to do. Not necessarily in terms of hard and fast. I want to do it. I want to do exactly this in this place for this amount of time. Blah 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 blah. No, it's more. I started off as just assembling my lists of what I feel are personal assets. Some of them are attributes and skills, and some of them are kind of more coincidental. For example, like, I like to organize and be very proactive about things. That's a personal attribute. Another one would be that I know for a fact that I am hard to miss when you're physically in the same room as me. That is not like a thing I worked to learn. That is a byproduct of being a really tall female and having a grandmother who would swat me when I didn't stand up straight. And so learning how to command attention is not something I ever learned how to do. It's sort of an accident, but it's definitely an asset when you're talking about what you want to do in the future. And so, yes, I do plan to continue with mission work. I don't precisely know how that's going to play out, because that's not really up to me. It is up to God. So hopefully what I'm thinking is because God has told me to think that. And so hopefully it'll go from there and work out. How has your ministry abroad brought you closer to Christ and God? It's been really, really obvious with the people that I've been with physically here, like literally can look at them, the presence of God in them, and through them into my life. But even when I have been alone, some of the side effects of being sick, how I was sick, include not being able to leave the bed and having to talk yourself into rolling over because you know it's going to hurt. And so that gives you a lot of time to just sit there and powwow with Jesus. So I'm not sure that that's necessarily because of being a missionary, but that's definitely because of the illness. And so I would have learned it eventually anyways, but this happened to bring it out a little sooner. What would you recommend other missionaries or individuals looking to become? I don't understand that question. That's not, what would you recommend other missionaries or individuals looking to become missionaries? That's not a complete sentence. I don't know where you're going with that. I'm sorry. Send it again, James or Ali, or put it over in the little question box thingy. So I'm not sure where that question was going for me, so I'm gonna have to skip that. And then what have I learned about myself through this experience? So very much. And I'm gonna try and put it in some blog posts in the future. It's hard because some of it is just really hard to put into words, how you change your thought process and your approach to yourself and others through this experience. The guy whose job I got in Florida, Daniel Lemley, who is now a deacon in the transitional diaconate, or yeah, something very similar to that. Basically, he went to seminary while I did his job and then this. But after I decided to do this and he was home on Christmas break, he said, oh yeah, there's a bunch of folks at VTS that have been through YASC and did serve as YASC. And I said, what do you think of the program because of them? He said, you can always tell which ones they are because they just approach everything differently, whether it's the school work of being in seminary or it's how they approach group interactions or certain projects or just life. He's like, they come at it differently. And he's like, they seem to be a lot more like okay with everything. Like the rest of us are like pulling out hair and freaking out. Like he's like, they just, you can tell who's been through the program because they come out different. And so I have a feeling that's what's happening to me, but I also really would rather not people see that at seminary because I would rather not be at seminary. Sorry. I'm sure VTS is awesome, but I don't want to go to seminary. Let me make sure I've got what I'm getting here. Okay. I think that's all the questions I have at this point. And there's only about 15 minutes left. So I can sit here and stare at you, all three of you, right now, plus whoever shows up to watch this video after it's over. But wait a second, oh, okay, that was something else. Sorry, my battery on my phone is going to die. Oh, there are 6 somethings on Facebook, so let me say this is. Oh, there are more questions on Facebook. I'm sorry, I had people ask questions in way too many places. Uh-oh, so sorry if you can't see me, you'll see me later. There's Ali's questions directly from Ali. Thank you, James, for forwarding those on since I actually did those already. Okay, now I understand what Ali's question was. It got lost in transposing. But I think I answered that at the beginning of this video. So if you missed that, I think you can rewind it, but otherwise in 15 minutes, it'll be on YouTube and you can definitely go back and start over. So yes, I have gotten to all the questions that folks asked me. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Expect a blog post over this weekend that will have Bishop Curry pictures and pictures of my house and my classroom. And I think that's about it. But if you have anything else, last chance to ask more questions over in the little sidebar for questions. Oh, I'm supposed to do a shout out to Holy Innocents in Portuguese, but I didn't actually think about what I wanted to say in advance. And now I'm sort of in English mode. So unlike my friend James, who has too many languages, I can't switch back and forth with super ease. So sorry, I'll work on that for another time when I'm in Portuguese brain space. But it really is not simple for me to switch back and forth after this much talking in English. So I guess that's about it, unless my phone starts going off with other people's last minute stuff, which I will connect it back to Wi-Fi so it would do that. I tried to keep it off Wi-Fi so it wouldn't slow down the bandwidth on this. But I am quite fortunate to even be able to do this. Quite a few of my friends in the program can't even like watch YouTube videos regularly because they just don't have good enough internet. So I'm quite fortunate, although it is part of the job I'm doing. I can't imagine they would try to do a computer class in a place where there's no internet access. But I mean, I'm sure someone's tried it. But because Brazil happens to have those kind of things, and I get a hot shower that's taller than me. So I'm pretty spoiled as far as a lot of missionary placements with anybody, but especially with YASC go. I don't have to shower from a bucket, and I have a 6-burner gas stove and a refrigerator and a washing machine. It is semi-automatic, which would be way better if I was less forgetful. I have flooded my own house 3 times doing laundry. I just got a text message from someone. I do not know your number in my phone. It doesn't have a name with it. I'm working on it. Sorry. I guess I could say hola, holy innocent. I'm not actually sure how to say holy. Like, I know how to say holy, but I don't know how to say innocence in Portuguese. It's not a big word here. So let me Google Translate, my bestest friend. Santos Inocentes. Well, there you go. It's really not that different. So, bem-vindos às pessoal de Santos Inocentes. There you go, Portuguese. Woo. I'm going to try and be posting some more music and said lyrics in Portuguese as we go along here in the next few blog posts. One, because it's cool. I like the church where I attend weekly is, as I said, very ecumenical, and they have a live band instead of an organ or just a piano. So they do a lot of the Brazilian contemporary Christian music. So it's very fun to sing along to and listen to. It's not, you know, like listening to hymns on your iPod. So it's fun to listen to, but and it's somewhat more standard words. A lot of hymns have some rather obscure terminology in them. I don't know the last time I ever prostrate fell in common day English, but you know, it's a hymn. And one of the main lines that people actually remember from hymns in the Episcopal Church. So this music that we do every week is a lot easier to pick up for me because it's not anything highly complicated. But I'll also be posting the music mostly because I want appreciation for how freaking difficult Portuguese is. There's so much Spanish to unlearn before Portuguese because the pronunciation, the spelling can be exactly the same and the pronunciation will be completely different, or the pronunciation will be exactly the same and the spelling will be completely different. They treat certain letter pairs very, very differently from Spanish. And so it's very tricky. I mean, I am by no means fluent in Spanish at all. I took a lot of years of it in school. It did not make that much difference in my everyday life. It was helpful in South Florida, but actually my Spanish has gotten better by learning Portuguese. In Puerto Rico, I found out that I understood all the Spanish, including in some of the panel discussions with the bishops about migration and refugees. I understood all the Spanish without translation, but when we went to go get something from the drugstore, I could understand everything that was being asked of me by the cabbie or by the folks in the store, and I was unable to respond in such a manner that they would know what the hell I was saying. They do not understand what, like, Portuguese is similar, but it is not similar enough that Spanish speakers understand it naturally. Although it is a lot easier if you speak Portuguese to learn Spanish than it is to go the other way around, apparently. And that's something I've heard from multiple people here about bishops and clergy from other South American countries that have come to Brazil for meetings or events, is that the Brazilians understand the Spanish and the Spanish speakers do not understand the Portuguese. So great and not great. I was so proud of myself that I understood it, but if they didn't also speak English, I had no way to fully communicate with them because I could not process what little I remember of Spanish conjugation anymore because I had worked so hard to replace it and learn the Portuguese. So yeah, I have to find somewhere in the US that has a lot of Portuguese speakers. I'm told that's Connecticut and Texas, I think. I know some in Texas for sure, because I've spoken to people about that in this process. I think the other one is somewhere in the Northeast, strangely enough. I mean, outside of somewhere like New York City, which has chunks of everybody. So yeah, being in South Florida, I'll understand more Spanish. It will not help me when it comes to Latin night at my favorite dance places or participating in a Hispanic Crucio. Oh well. But there you have it. 9 more minutes. I don't know what else to talk about. And somebody has really bad internet connection because I see it going 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2 down there on the number. So sorry if you're having struggles, but it all will be posted later. So if you have a better signal later, hopefully you can catch what you missed. Hopefully in the future, I will be able to do more of these. I feel like people were very interested, although I had very, very, very short notice that I was going to do this. So I was told by the diocese and by my parish communications folks next time to give them not necessarily a week, but at least over a Sunday to publicize so that they can announce it at services and such, especially during the summer when folks are not meeting on Wednesdays. So possibly there will be more of these in the future because people seem to want to know more, especially about Brazil with the Olympics coming up and just in general with all the stuff going on. But also I know like right now a lot of the folks who have said they wanted to ask questions are currently sequestered at Dayspring with no phone service or very little phone service at least. So hopefully more in the future. And I'll get more comfortable with either this format or if Facebook would please allow it. I would like to do a Facebook Live event because that seems to be a lot easier for most folks because it's somewhere they already use a lot. But currently, I guess because I'm outside West, I'm not sure why, but I'm not permitted to do Facebook Live on any platform, whether it's my phone or my computer or anything like that. So hopefully we'll figure this out as we go forward. And as we get ready for things like back to school. I know the kids that may be watching this are probably like, no, we just started summer, don't say those dreaded words. Well, right here, it's just the end of the first semester. The really cool thing is, it's just the 2016 school year. The whole school year happens in the year. That's kind of nice, because summer break is over the holidays of Christmas and New Year's. So that's pretty cool as a teacher, and it would be pretty cool as a student, because it's less confusing. But there you have it. Coming up in my world is at the beginning of July, we are having a visit from Bishop Kate and 4 other clergy from the Diocese of Indianapolis, which is the companion diocese, well, one of the companion dioceses of the Diocese of Brasilia. The other one is somewhere in Mozambique. And I don't know what that diocese is technically called, but they also speak Portuguese, so that's probably why that pair was made. And so the bishop is going to have me help with that visit a lot, especially with translation. So I am currently, besides my actual teaching, hard at work trying to get information written down from the students and from the other teachers and administrators about the experience at the center, and also about what sort of dreams and goals they have going forward, so that we can talk about the most effective ways to partner in mission and not just have it be a money funnel. But you know, kind of what is really needed and what could really be done to enhance the work atmosphere, the school setting, and the administrative parts of running this sort of a program, because they've now started a second one, which is, I think they have 18 students right now, and it's in Philadelphia, Brazil. And so obviously this is needed in more than just our little location. So kind of finding out ways to keep the diocese as a whole. Oh, random person texting me was Ashley. Okay, hi Ashley. So ways to keep both dioceses and strengthen that partnership going forward, so that it's not just one person doing something or taking money or designating what needs to be done, but that the folks on the ground every day get a say and get to have their real life practical experience heard. So that's what I'm working on right now at work. And then at the end of their visit is, ironically, Festa Junina, which is a big harvest party celebration. Also celebrates the holy days of the three gospel seeds, I think it is. I don't remember what it translates to, but basically there's 3 major feast days at the end and throughout June. And they also, because this is the start of the dry season and the end of the growing season for most of the country, they do, I mean, basically like what the US does for homecoming is it's a big party, and it happens to usually be bigger in this region because there's a lot more farmland in the central regions of Brazil than there is on the coastline. And so it's a very big country theme, you know, straw and plaid and cowboy hats and boots, of which I own none, so I don't know what I'm gonna do. But it's gonna be fun. And so the church does a 2-day party, which is small by Festa Junina standards. But that'll be right at the end of the visit from Indianapolis. They leave the morning of the second day, so they'll be there for the first day and not for the second. But because of calendar scheduling this year, it's in July, which Junina means June. So it's the June party in July. Brazil time is a real thing. So yes, I'll be helping with that, and well, what little things, probably putting things up high, sort of my go-to help, and probably making cupcakes. So lots of cupcakes, bolinos. So that's what I've got coming up, and continuing with classes. So it's interesting, and there's a lot to look forward to. I'm hoping to get back, now that I'm able to stand and sing and play at the same time, hoping to get back involved with the music at church. There are a lot of similar hymns that have Portuguese versions already, so combining that with my English knowledge and the fact that I already know how to play them is a real opportunity for all of us to kind of get another level of connection with music. So it's all pretty good. And it's strangely quiet tonight. Normally there's dogs, a lot more dogs. They must have gone to bed early. So I guess since it is 8:29 and there are no more questions at this point, I will say ciao, ciao until next time. And vai com Deus. Bye.